Shalom. It's not Israel's fault. When you attack Israel the way the world attacks Israel, it's clearly anti-Semitism. We Jews know what price we've paid for this anti-Semitism. 6.25 million Jews killed by the Nazis in a lot of Europe just 50 and 60 years ago. And scholars estimate that the 14 million Jews today represent 2% of the 700 million Jews that should exist in the world. So why do I say it's not Israel's fault? Well, first of all, who's saying it is Israel's fault? Jimmy Carter's new book, Israel Apartheid, his idea that it's all Israel's problem and all the problems in the United States and the world relations are caused by Israel. The 9/11 Commission, appointed by President Bush, several of the members concluded that the problems are Israel's fault. This new purported scholarly paper by this professor at Harvard and the University of Chicago makes me embarrassed to be a University of Chicago student hearing about poor scholarship like this, where half the footnotes come from two guys who the Jewish community know about their attitude in Israel, two Jews. The Human Rights Commission, which composed of 47 nations, and they're focusing exclusively on human rights violations in Israel, when Israel is one of the freest, most democratic, and encouraging of human rights countries in the world. They're completely ignoring all the systematic abuses in the dozens and dozens and dozens of Muslim countries and other tyrannical dictatorships. In the poll that declared Israel to be the most worst cause and the greatest cause of problems in the world, this is pure anti-Semitism. When Syria sends people to kill the head of Lebanon, how is that Israel's fault? When the Lebanese Hezbollah are trying to destroy the Lebanese democratically elected government, how is that Israel's fault? King Jordan comes to the United States Congress and makes a speech, basically blames Israel, when his biggest problem is not Israel, with whom he has a peace treaty and wants to simply live in peace and help Jordan, but Al-Qaeda and the other terrorists trying to take over Jordan. Hamas and Fatah shoot each other. How is that Israel's fault? When the Shiites and the Sunnis in Iraq are killing each other in huge numbers, how is that Israel's fault? We think around the world, when Iran is building ballistic missiles and trying to get nuclear arms, not only to destroy Israel, which they clearly say they want to do, but now can reach Europe and are desperately trying to reach the United States, how is that Israel's fault? When Saudi Arabia funds the most extreme kind of Islamic schools and trains fundamentalist Islamic all over the world, and when most of the 9/11 hijackers were Saudi Arabia, how is that Israel's fault? Israel is the greatest country in the world, maybe next to the United States, which I'll show in another video. But this is not Israel's fault. You open up the paper any day and you see huge articles about the problems that the many 57 nations that are dominated by Muslims are causing. Besides Iran and all the trouble, the world's focus on Iran. You read the paper, Baghdad, people killing each other. How is that Israel's fault? We read about the ambushes in Iraq, all the problems going there. One day in the paper, a story about Palestinians killing people in Lebanon, Ethiopian Arabs, Somalian Arabs, the huge problems in Darfur, where Arabs are persecuting, raping, murdering hundreds of thousands and perhaps 1 million Christians and other indigenous people of Africa. You have a story in Pakistan about bombing targets close to home, Sudan and war crimes. Just on and on and on about the problems not caused by Israel, but by fundamentalist Muslims. Now, Islam itself may be teaching peace, and probably the huge majority of Muslims want to live in peace. But the problems in the world are not being caused by Israel. This is pure anti-Semitism. And people with a brain need to think carefully about what the real causes are. Israel is the one country in the world, besides the United States, that can help uplift the many nations. It's done so much to contribute to the world, medically, in terms of food, in terms of science, computers, cell phones, books, literature, music. If it simply would be left alone in peace. It's ridiculous to focus the ire on Israel when the problems are clearly elsewhere. Israel is not the problem, and the world has to stop being anti-Semitic.